Hello, everyone. Today, I wanted to go ahead and talk to you about my Classic WoW Season of Discovery Level 25 Healer Guide. This guide is going to be mostly focused on the level 25 bracket and how the healers are likely going to be performing in that bracket, and less so about how these classes will perform at max level or a 40-man raid environment or just in general in other scenarios. Previously, I was making these videos and having them be very forward looking about how they would look at max level. But when I was making those videos, I had been under the assumption Blizzard actually wasn't going to be doing balance patches for these runes. In hindsight, that's a very silly assumption to make. But in my defense, I've basically been playing the exact same patch of WoW for 5 years straight with no balance patches. So I just didn't even conceptualize that Blizzard was doing balance patches. So while previously I could look at like a rune package and just see how impactful that would be on the meta at 60 today, and that, if the rune packages they had gotten continuing to move forward, we could see if they had kept that theme to them, you could see just how that would shape out. But given they're going to be nerfing overpowered runes today, I think there's not much value in speculating, as it's going to be very non-deterministic looking forward, at least until we can see far more of the runes that we're going to have. Once we start getting like a 75-80% of the total runes we're going to have for our kits, then I could probably start looking how that would look. But for the time being, I'm just going to focus on the current brackets, maybe the upcoming bracket, and make videos on those. But I will be releasing more of these for the future brackets. All right. So before I get into how they're going to operate at level 25 and how the runes are going to change up how they're playing, let's talk about how healers work in vanilla. I list out sort of the three responsibilities of a healer in raid. It's basically heal the raid to any damage they've taken, use your class-specific buffs, debuffs, utility. That's stuff like Fairy Fire if you're a druid, your like Blessing of Fortitude if you're a priest, or whatever it is, right? And then just any relevant boss mechanics. In all honesty, this actually just comes down to one job, which is heal the raid. A lot of classes, you're just going to buff the raid at the beginning. Maybe you have a debuff you put on the boss or something, but you're just going to be buffing the raid at the beginning. Druids specifically are going to be fairy firing every other mob, but everyone else, like paladins, buff the raid and then just heal. Like your main job is just heal. And something to keep in mind, if you've played a healer in almost any other MMO type game or another expansion of WoW, you probably know, okay, well, I'm going to do DPS when I'm not healing, but my main job is to heal, but when no one needs to be healed, I'm going to be doing DPS. That is not true of vanilla. In vanilla, you are only healing and you are expected to never do a DPS spell. And it's because vanilla WoW is the only expansion of the game where your healing gear has no DPS on it, and your DPS specs as in general are just terrible. Even when you are specced into them with the proper gear, your DPS is really bad. So when you're not specced into it and you don't have the proper gear, you literally get almost no benefit from your gear in terms of your DPS at max level. It's just so mana inefficient to cast damage. You are better off just only focusing on healing. And if your raid is consistently having downtime with the healers where they're just sniping each other's heals and there's nothing to do, then you might as well just cut the healers. And that's how you get more DPS out of the raid. Instead of the healers doing more damage, you just shrink the number of healers you bring for the next raid. This is something to look at for how we're going to evaluate the 25 meta. The level 25 meta is, there's going to be very little spell power or healing power, I should say. And healing power is actually nowhere near as important in this bracket as it is in other brackets. And that's because there is like almost no ability to downrank at 25. Now, for those of you who aren't aware of how spell coefficients work, if you learn a spell, the level at which you learn the spell, so you can see heal you learn at level 22, healing touch you learn at level 20, etc. The level at which you learn that spell, if it is level 20 or less, that means that spell will have a reduced spell power coefficient than what it should have. So if you try to downrank to a spell that you learned at level 18, there is almost no point because it will have a very drastically reduced spell power coefficient. This means at level 25, most classes are probably only going to have a single heal spell that does scale with their spell power at max efficiency, which means there is no point to use lower ranked spells at that bracket. So the base healing values is actually very important. On top of that, we're going to have very little healing power at level 25 anyway. We might get some, but we're not going to get nearly as much as we would have at level 60. So looking at these, you can see most of them are pretty close. I mean, priest is generally in vanilla are like almost always have the highest base healing values. You can see like paladins are really low on this for some reason, but the crazy one is mage. The mage regeneration and honestly all of the rune learned abilities have really good mana values. When you look at the tooltip on Wowhead, it's like 69% of base mana. I don't really understand how that's being calculated because that would indicate to me it probably should be more than 153 mana. But this is a picture I took at BlizzCon for the demo, and the data mined spell has not changed since then. So we can expect at level 25 it probably will be 153 mana, at least for a human mage. So I don't understand how it's being calculated. If maybe they nerf the mana cost for the raid at BlizzCon, then take down mages in this example. But assuming this is accurate or even close to accurate, mages just have really efficient heals, which I think makes some amount of sense for the kit that they've got. So maybe that's just the way it's supposed to be. Anyway, let's move on. So to talk about sort of, if you've looked at some of the runes, you've probably noticed things like Temporal Beacon on the Mage kit, or Fury of Stormwedge for the Druid kit, or whatever else we might get for the other healer classes. And that Blizzard is now trying to get us more into that modern way of doing things as a healer, where when the raid doesn't need to be healed, you should be doing damage, right? The most obvious example of this is the Druid one, where now your Wrath is 100% reduced cost. It is a free spell, and it gives you a small chance to proc an instant cast Healing Touch. Healing Touch is your biggest instant heal. That's a really strong heal. 12% is not a great proc rate, but honestly, if you're rolling hots on everybody, maybe that's completely fine. Looking at how all this operates, you're probably honestly not going to be doing a lot of off DPS still. Maybe as more runes come out in future phases, you will be. But at level 25, it doesn't seem to be super efficient to be doing this. And given the healing requirements we saw on the demo, I don't think that just saying, oh, we're going to have one of our two healers be off healing. Even if you want to do like a 2.5 healer situation, you'd have the Boomy bring like a resto package to the raid, and maybe that's where you'd see these fit in. But I think you're going to need two healers who are main healing, and I don't think that these are going to be super impactful. But between Mage and Druid, I think if you want a DPS as a healer, Druid's the better between the two, because the 100% reduced Wrath is just insane in terms of the efficiency. The arcane damage you do as a Mage is just not that good at any level, to be honest. So it doesn't really make sense. But I'll get more into that later on the Mage one. In the meantime, let's talk about Paladin. So Paladins honestly are probably bottom of the pack at 25. One of the biggest issues with Paladin is they just don't have their key talents come on, namely 5 out of 5 Illumination. For those of you who don't know, Illumination is the talent in the Holy Paladin tree that is basically the cornerstone of the Holy Paladin identity in vanilla, which is when you get a crit with a holy spell, your next holy spell is free. And what you're going to do as a Holy Paladin, you're going to stack MP5 and crit and get so much of both of those stats that you are basically infinite mana at level 60, and you're just going to be pumping out heals for the entire length of the fight. You don't have the HPS of other classes, and you don't have the healing variety to match every scenario as every other class. You have a very limited kit. It's literally just Holy Light and Flash of Light. But you're so mana efficient, you can just keep casting the entire fight and practically have infinite mana. Ironically enough, because you don't have that, and given how bad the base healing values of your spells are, you're probably actually one of the least mana efficient healers at level 25. And honestly, the first 3 rows of Holy Talents don't really give you much. It's really the 4th and 5th roll that where all the power is. Row, I should say. So there's almost no point to go Holy. So if you're going to build a level 25 Holy Paladin and you want to be healing, I would say don't even put a single point in the Holy Tree. Just go for your buffs. The value you bring as a Holy Paladin is the value you bring as a Paladin, which is the buffs you bring to the raid. So get 5 out of 5 Might, get the King's buff, and then just get some filler talents there. And then you can get Horn of Lordaeron. The Might buff buffs Horn of Lordaeron, so you can give huge DPS buffs to everyone in your party. And that's going to be sort of the unique value you bring as a Paladin. You're going to bring a ton of raid buffs and some good raid utility as well on top of the buffs. But you just look to have pretty bad HPS output. You are going to have Beacon of Light. Beacon of Light is really strong. You're going to put that on the tank. You're going to be individual casting heals on people. You're probably not going to do the other way around where you heal the beacon and it heals everyone a little bit. But you're going to be overhealing a lot like that. We'll see how that works out. That is obviously great, but I just don't see them having the healing output of other classes, especially when you consider the runes from other classes. All right, shaman. Shamans are interesting. So shamans are sort of just a good all around healer. They don't have everything they want. Obviously, one of the biggest things you bring shamans for is their air totem, for Wind Fury totem or Tranquil Air totem if threat's an issue, or your totem weaving even to get both of them. But you're not going to able to bring that because you don't have your air totem yet. You do get some good earth and water totems. Obviously, you get your dispels, like the poison dispel with the water totem, and you get strength of earth on the earth totem, which is really important. Your base healing wave is a pretty strong heal. It's pretty mana efficient, so that's like a good one. But there's nothing that's really like spectacular that you've gotten so far. Healing rate's good. It's not that insane. Earth Shield's a great, like, sort of throw it on the tank. It tops them up a little bit. And Water Shield's good for mana. So you're going to be happy running a Resto Shaman. They're going to be good. They're going to, bring their totems. They're going to bring the standard Shaman kit. But nothing really exciting yet so far. At later levels, you're going to have, like, Overload Chain Heal to just have tons of Chain Healing. But you don't have Chain Heal at this level. So you're just going to be single cast healing. You're going to have good, decent heals. Your talents are relevant, but not as good as you're going to be later on. Druid. So Druids are pretty interesting. Honestly, based off of what we get access to at level 25, you don't get much. So you don't Druids normally have actually a lot of variety of builds. They could go to Raid, you could go Regrowth Spec, you could go Deep Resto, you could go Moonglow. There's a lot of different ways to build a Resto Druid, but you don't really have any of those. You can't really get the key talents for any of those builds. You can't get NS, you don't even have Innervate, so you're missing a lot of that package. But what you do get from your runes is you get Fury of the Stormrage, and you can get that DPS package out there. So if you're at 25, I'd say that's probably your most viable spec, that off-healing spec. You're going to go Fury of the Stormrage. You're going to roll Life Bloom on your main tank. And by the way, if you want to get the most efficient Life Bloom, get 3, stack it up to 3, let it tick, let it fall off, and then stack it up to 3 again so you can get that mana refund on there. You're going to use Wild Growth to raid heal. And then just when people are topped up and you can justify it, fish for Healing Touch procs with Fury of the Stormrage. And you're just going to constantly spam Wraths. It doesn't impact your 5-second rule, so you're going to get 100% Spirit-based mana regeneration while in combat, which is pretty insane. So you're going to be pretty mana efficient that way. You're going to have probably pretty bad healing output compared to a lot of the other classes. Just don't even bother casting Regrowth and Rejuve. Maybe cast Rejuve if you want to hot, but it's pretty mana inefficient. I'd say focus on Life Bloom, focus on Wild Growth, and focus on Healing Touch. Your other spells are just pretty mana inefficient, and you're not really going to have the healing output of other classes so far. Maybe later on, but right now I'd probably focus on this DPS package, get the best DPS you can get out of a healer while not really bringing the healing output of other classes. I think in general, based off what I saw from the demo and what normally happens, you probably prefer to have a just pure HPS class, but this is probably the most viable DPS healer that we've had so far. Priest. Priest, no surprise to anyone who's healed in vanilla before, they're going to be the best healers at level 25. In terms of their raw healing throughput, they have really strong runes for this as well. Your hand rune is the best slot you have for this, so that gives you either Circle of Healing or Penance. Penance on the demo was just ridiculously mana efficient for the healing it gave, way stronger than Regeneration. And Circle of Healing, similarly, is also just super mana efficient for the healing you put out. All of the rune abilities are really strong, and you get sort of you have two very strong ones. You have Prayer of Mending, which does just blanket raid healing. It heals 5 people, and it does smart healing. It finds the next lowest person. And Circle of Healing just heals everyone in the party. And Penance is just a really strong individual heal on a short cooldown. So you have like you're spoiled for options. You have these really strong rune heals, and you get a pretty decent healer talent package you can get at 25. It's not as strong as you get at later levels. You don't get the really juicy holy ones. You don't get your mana cost reduction. You don't get your heal strength. You don't get spiritual guidance. Forget the healing power for your spells. You can't get PI or anything out of the disc tree either. So you're kind of missing like all those really fun stuff. But you get some really strong runes. The weakest rune is probably your chest rune. Neither of them are really that good. The shield is really mana inefficient, so you're probably not going to be casting it that much. And you probably don't want to be casting Flash Heal. There will be times you probably need to cast Flash Heal, so you will get some value out of Serendipity to go Flash Heal, regular heal, and then maybe follow it up with a Penance or a Circle of Healing or something to get back onto those rune ones. The 2 rune ones, all the rune heals you have are on a cooldown, so you can't spam them, but they're have really, really strong healing throughput. Their base healing values are the highest in the game on every class outside of Mage now. So if you're looking to heal in vanilla and you want to have a class that is a pretty safe pick to be a good healer, go for Priest. They're going to be really strong. Mage. Mage is weird. Honestly, coming into this, I thought mages were going to be trash. I played them on the demo. They actually looked really strong on the demo, and looking at the abilities, they look still really strong. One of the things about the mage, they don't really have the insane healing throughput of other classes. Like a priest can really do strong AoE healing right now with Circle of Healing and Prayer of Mending. Mage doesn't really have that. They have Mass Regeneration. It's on like a 15-second cooldown or something like that, though, so it's pretty long. They have a really, really strong CD, though. Probably one of the strongest healing CDs in the game in Rewind Time, where just heals just a shit ton of health based on the amount of damage someone took over the last 5 seconds. So if there's a really big raid-wide blast that goes out that hits everyone, you're just going to Temporal Beacon everyone in the raid that you can. And then once that heads out, rewind time and just get an insane amount of burst healing out of that cooldown. But the real value of Mage is what else you get out of the Mage kit. So they have really mana efficient heals with regeneration. It's just a really high, heal for the amount of mana you spend on it. But most importantly, you're a mage. So that means you're going to have a giant mana pool and you have Evocate. And you get Evocate at 25. So you're going to be able to burn through your mana pool on regens and then Evocate and then start doing it again. Because Evocate will just full mana you at this level. So you're going to have just tons and tons of mana. You're going to be a really good healer for those long attrition-y fights that need lots of healing. And then obviously you're going to be good in those big bursts of healing as well. You don't get your mana gems at this level, but once you start getting those online too, you'll have even more mana from that as well. Their sort of arcane damage they do is really not that good. Like for the mana you're spending, it's pretty bad. Unless they buff it again back up to 100% or something like that, I really wouldn't focus on it. The one thing to note there, though, you can, based on the way it's worded, and I didn't try this on the demo, you can probably get Temporal Beacon on someone and then wand the boss with an arcane wand and do some free healing that way. It's going to be super minimal, probably literally maybe 10 healing per second, but it is technically free healing. So do with that information what you will. All right, let's go for the tier list. I think, no surprise, Priest is going to be the strongest for HP healing output. Prayer of Mending and Circle of Healing is an insane amount of raid healing, and if you need to have some more single target mana efficient heals, Penance is a really, really strong mana efficient heal for the Priest kit. You're kind of spoiled for options. You get good talents. You get 15% of your mana regen. You get Inner Fire, or not Inner Fire. You get the one Inner Focus that gives you the ability to cast a spell for free. So Priest just going to have really good healing throughput. You're going to love having them. If you need more healing, there's probably no one better to bring than a Priest. Mages are weird. I did not expect them to be S, but honestly, I think the way it's shaping up, they're going to be a really, really strong healer at 25, mainly just because of how long they're going to be able to last in a fight. They're going to be able to start healing and continue healing for minutes on the fight with how mana efficient their heals are, how much mana they have as a mage, because you're going to stack int, and the ability to evocate, to regenerate their mana on top of any mana potions. And that's sort of the value you're going to bring. And then also the massive CD. I don't think the arcane damage is going to be that important part of your kit. Shamans are just a solid all-around good healer. They bring good utility. They're not absolutely ridiculous in terms of their healing output. They don't have all the totems you'd want, so they don't bring like Wind Fury Totem, which is obviously a major part of what their value is. But they're still a really good healer. They're going to be completely fine. Just maybe not the HPS output of a priest. Uh, druids, again, druids are the DPS healers so far. If you're going to look to do some off DPS while healing, go a druid. You're going to be just rolling life blooms on people and then spamming wrath to sort of regenerate your mana. Regenerate your mana with the 5-second rule while also fishing for procs. Probably not as mana efficient as other classes, and if you're just going to be focused on healing, and probably not as mana efficient or as strong a healing throughput as a priest is. So they're sort of not really the best healer right now, but I think they'll still be plenty viable. Paladins, I think they provide a lot of utility and buffs. I mean, they're going to buff your party's damage by a shit ton, but that can also be brought by other paladins. Like if there's a prop paladin or a rep paladin. Now it remains to be seen how strong those specs will be. But if they're moderately strong, they could just bring the Horn of Lordaeron and bring the kit that you're bringing. So given that, now it might just be that those other specs are pretty bad, and you still need to bring paladins, of course. So maybe then paladins required for those buffs, but their healing output's just looking pretty bad at 25. But yeah, so that's that. That's the video. If you guys have any things you want to see for future videos, I'm going to be trying to put these out once a week, maybe bi-weekly if I have to go do something on a week. But yeah, if you have any suggestions for videos you want to see, leave it in the comments. I do read all the comments, so I will almost definitely see it. And if I think it's something I can give an informed opinion on, I will make a video of it. Thank you.